If you use Claude for any sort of strategic, academic, or creative work, this trick I'm going to teach you is going to dramatically improve your responses from Claude. We just dropped a Readwise MCP server, which lets you chat with your entire library of highlights from Kindle, podcasts, YouTube videos, and more right inside of Claude. Basically, it lets Claude synthesize answers not only from the entire web, but everything you've personally read and highlighted over the years, including physical books. Let me show you how to install the Readwise MCP in Claude and give you a couple examples for how you can use it. To get started, the first thing you're going to want to make sure you've done is imported all of your highlights to Readwise. You can come into your dashboard and click on Connect and Sync, Import Highlights, and then on this page, you'll see the option to import highlights from over 30 different sources, including those from Kindle, Pocket, as well as our very own Read It Later app called Reader, which is included in your free trial, as well as your full Readwise subscription. If you also happen to read a lot from physical paper books, you can also import highlights from those using our physical book import tool inside of the Readwise mobile app. Once you have all of your highlights imported into Readwise, you can move on to installing the Readwise MCP server inside of Claude. As of right now, Claude only supports MCPs inside their desktop app, so you'll want to make sure you have that installed on your appropriate device. You'll also want to make sure that you have some type of software that allows you to edit JSON files. I know that's probably going to sound intimidating for some of you. It definitely did for me. However, you can do this by installing a simple free tool like Visual Studio Code, which is compatible both on Macs as well as PC devices. Once you have the Claude desktop app and the Visual Studio Code installed on your device, you can move on to getting the MCP installed. You're going to go over to Claude, Settings, and click on Developer. From here, you'll click on Edit Configuration, and you'll see this file called Claude Desktop JSON file. We're going to want to inject the Readwise MCP code into this. So go ahead and right-click, open this with Visual Studio Code, and then from here you'll copy in the Readwise MCP code, which you can find on the Readwise MCP page that I will link in the video description. So you'll come down here and copy this code, and then you will paste this into the Claude JSON file. You'll notice there's an area here called Access Token, which is what will give Claude permission to access your highlights on Readwise. To access that, you will come back to the Readwise MCP page, where it is hyperlinked, and then go ahead and copy your code to your clipboard, and then just fill it in here between the two quotation marks. Okay, now that you have that plugged in, you can go ahead and save this. In my experience, once you've updated this JSON file, it's usually best to go ahead and quit Claude and then reopen it so it actually takes. Okay, so the MCP is officially installed. You can now go ahead and start chatting with your Readwise highlights inside of Claude. There's a couple different ways you can chat with your highlights. One of my favorites is fuzzy or semantic search. So an example of that would be maybe you're trying to remember a quote, but you can't remember the exact words. In this situation, you can tell Claude a rough idea of what you think the quote was about, and it will pull up the exact highlight you're looking for. So here I said, I'm trying to remember a highlight from Alain de Botton about being yourself in relationships. Can you help me find it? You'll notice that I've used the word highlight, which I think isn't always necessary, but I do find it sometimes useful in helping cue or nudge Claude into specifically searching your Readwise database rather than online. So let's go ahead and start this. As you can see, it is running through my highlight vector inside of Readwise, and it's found several highlights. So as you can see here, it's pulled up the exact interview I was thinking of, where this quote first happened, and then it's given me the actual quote itself that I was thinking of. And then further down, you can see Claude also identified slightly similar highlights from one of de Botton's books, The Course of Love, which I also highlighted. One thing I'm noticing as I'm looking at this is that it's a little bit hard for me to differentiate between what is a quote and what is Claude's own sort of summary. So I'm going to ask Claude to rewrite this with better formatting so I can quickly differentiate. I gave Claude a little pat on the back, and then I just said, can you rewrite your response so the direct quotes are in bolded italics and your own commentary is in plain text? Let's see if this improves the formatting at all. This is much better. It's way easier to scan, and just looking at this, I can see Claude actually pulled out 1, 2, 3, 4 direct quotes from one of my favorite authors. So that's one way you can use the Readwise MCP in Claude to quickly resurrect direct quotes that you might want to use in your writing or journaling practice. The other great way you can use the MCP is to actually perform synthesis on your highlights. So let me give you an example of that. So in this example, let's say I'm doing an academic literature review and I want help synthesizing different ideas that I've read across all these different academic papers. So for this prompt, I've said, I've done a lot of academic reading on John Steinbeck's The Chrysanthemums. Based on my highlights, can you tell me some of the main themes academic scholars have identified in this short story? So again, I'm using the signal phrase based on my highlights, which is going to nudge Claude towards actually looking at my Readwise database rather than the whole web. And then I've also added in these formatting instructions based on some of the things we learned in the last conversation. So here is Claude's response that is synthesized from all my different highlights. As you can see, it's followed my instructions and given me these really nice bolded headers, which just makes scanning this way easier. And then it's italicized the actual highlights that I took that it was using to kind of develop these main themes. This is a very academic use case, but you can also use this for other strategic or more creative projects for work or just your personal life. For example, you could use the MCP server to help you synthesize answers from reading you've done to solve specific work problems, or you can use it to synthesize answers to more creative or personal questions you might be trying to answer at this stage of life. As of right now, the Readwise MCP can be installed in Claude and Cursor. However, rumor has it that ChatGPT is going to be supporting MCP soon. When that happens, I will absolutely be dropping a new tutorial, so be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. Thanks so much for watching and have fun chatting with your highlights.